You've just gotten into whiskey, but you're bombarded with a lot of words. You don't know what they mean. Well, hang on and we'll find out. Hello, I am the Colorado Whiskey Guy, and it is my mission to educate the world on Colorado whiskey. But today I'm going to teach you some of the basics. Now, when you start looking hard at whiskey, there can be a lot of words that can seem confusing. But don't worry about asking someone and looking dumb. That's what I'm here for. Well, not to look dumb, but I should just move on. Now let's go over 12 terms that you can find on bottles and what they mean. Now, comment below and let me know if I missed anything that you want to know about. Number 1, allocated. Allocated means that bourbon is hard to find. A lot of times, the one allocated bourbon that everybody thinks about is like Pappy Van Winkle, Old Rip, different bottles like that. But there's a lot of other bourbons out there that can be hard to find, that are very unobtainable. So they get allocated. What that means is they get dispersed by some way. In Colorado, that's up to the distributors, and they give it to different liquor stores who are their best customers. In some states, that means a lottery system. And in some states, it's just a surprise. Number 2 is Mashbill. Now, what that means is when you're talking about bourbon or whiskey, it's what that whiskey is made of. Mashbill is whatever combination of corn, rye, wheat, or malt that whiskey is made up of, and whatever percentage that may be. Number 3, barrel proof or cask strength. We'll cover them both. Barrel proof and cask strength mean the same thing. What that means is literally it's the strength of the whiskey as it came out of the barrel. Commonly for a lot of distillers, they bring that distillation proof down. They bring that proof down to something more manageable, like 90 proof or 80 proof, something that more people would like. But barrel proof is exactly the same way as it came out of the barrel. But that's different based on where it's distilled. It can be as low as 50%. It can be as high as 62 or 65%. It really depends. Single barrel. Now, that literally means a single barrel. This bottle came from a group of bottles, all from one barrel. And usually it'll have the barrel number on there, sometimes even details about which warehouse and it came from. Small batch. Now, that's different from single barrel. Small batch really doesn't have its own term. All that means it's a smaller batch of whiskey. But the thing is, that depends. If you're something as big as, say, Buffalo Trace, Sazerac, or Heaven Hill, well, they do thousands of barrels at a time. So small batch for them may only be 100 barrels. Well, for a smaller distillery, small batch may mean only 5 barrels. There's no definition. All it means is a smaller group of barrels that went into that whiskey. Distillery. Now, you may think this is obvious, but the distillery is literally who made the whiskey. A distillery distills the alcohol, the whiskey, from grain to make it. Non-producing distiller. Sometimes you won't find this on bottles, but you'll find this around online. What this means is someone who bottles whiskey that someone else distills. They buy barrels or large totes of whiskey from a larger distiller so that they can bottle it and they can sell it themselves. Now, that doesn't always happen. They sell it outright. Sometimes they put it into barrels themselves to age or finish in a different type of barrel. Maybe a wine barrel or I've even seen mezcal or tequila barrels. It depends. Either way, that means they're not making it themselves. Number 8, proof. Proof is literally how much alcohol there is in whiskey. Now, in the US, that commonly is the alcohol by volume times 2. So if it's 45% alcohol, that means it's 90 proof. Now, you can find that different sometimes overseas, different European countries. That's becoming less common. High-Rye or wheated. Now, both of those mean what the second grain is in bourbon. A high-rye bourbon will mean that after corn, the next grain is rye, is going to be the most plentiful. It has to be at least 51% corn. So the rest will be combination of rye and malt. which is barley, or rye, or wheat and barley. So a high rye, that means the second most ingredient is rye after corn. A wheated bourbon is the same thing. After corn, the next most plentiful is wheat. High rye bourbons are typically a little spicy. Wheated bourbons are typically a little sweeter. Bottled in bond. Now this is highly regulated. This is only in the US, as is bourbon. Bourbon can only be made in the US. But bottled in bond is a legal requirement, says that that this bourbon has to be at least 4 years old, made from the same distillery in the same season by the same master distiller. Now, if you want to see more about that, there's a little video up here that you might like. Number 11, we're almost through. Store pick or barrel pick. What that means is this store or this group went through directly with the distillery to pick a specific barrel and have it bottled. That means that whiskey, even though you may know what this brand tastes like, will taste a little bit different because that's from one barrel that maybe tastes a little bit different. Now, number 12, MGP. Now, what that means, it's sourced. And MGP is short for Midwest Grain Products. I think they might have gone through a name change last year to Ross and Squibb or something like that, but MGP is the larger name. So you won't find that on the back of a bottle. Easiest way to find out about that if it says distilled in Indiana or produced in Indiana. What that means is it most likely came from MGP because that is one of the only and the largest distiller in Indiana. They sell a lot of their whiskey to different brands, to different people, to different distilleries so that they can either blend it with their own distillate or just sell it outright. Well, I think that's enough for today. We went through quite a lot. So comment and let me know what you think. And if you want more information about whiskey, check out this video over here. But until next time, cheers.